we're back on the Zero Hour. As some of you know, as many of you know, we are sponsored by the organization known as Social Security Works. We are proud of that relationship. And joining us now is Nancy Altman, co-director of Social Security Works and a good friend, a good ally in the fight for all that is good and true and beautiful. She is co-director of Social Security. The fight for all that is beautiful. She is co-director of Social Security Works and co-chair of the Strengthen Social Security Coalition and Campaign. She is the author of The Battle for Social Security from FDR's Vision to Bush's Gamble. She was on the faculty of Harvard University's Kennedy School of Government, has taught at the Harvard Law School. She was Alan Greenspan's assistant as chairman of the bipartisan commission that created the 1983 Social Security Amendment. She's worked on the Hill. She's chairman of the board of directors of the Pension Rights Center. She's qualified to talk about this stuff. Let's leave it at that. And joining us now, our good friend, Nancy Altman. Thanks. Nancy, thanks so much for joining us.
Well, thank you for that wonderful introduction.
I'm sorry if I got a little carried away there, but
you can always get carried away when you're talking about me. That's great.
All right, it's a deal. Now, but we do love to have you on the show because you know your stuff technically, and in our opinion, we just we share the same values about how to look at it. And this was a significant week, I would say, for Social Security and Medicare because of the release of the Trustees report, which is always an invitation to renew debates old and new about these programs. Now, the take I had on it was I talked about the predictability of, I talked about, first of all, and I'll ask you your thoughts on, whether you disagree on some of these things. But first of all, I said, the usual suspects came out with the usual motives and kind of pandered to hysteria and fear where it wasn't necessary. And secondly, I said, my bottom line reading of the report was that things were looking better for Medicare overall. We obviously have issues to address, and things were basically holding steady, at least for Social Security. We need a minor adjustment, a transfer of funds to keep the disability fund going, but that there was no bad news on Social Security, I guess I would say, and things, if anything, were looking better over the last few years of Medicare. Do you think I got it right, wrong, 50-50?
No, I think you have it absolutely right. And just to put it all in perspective, these trustees reports have been coming out every single year since 1941. Benefits began being paid in 1940, and immediately the trustees would make these reports projecting out 3/4 of a century. The program's only been around 80 years, but every year they project out 3/4 of a century. And the idea is that it's a very conservatively managed program, and the trustees want to make sure that the American people's money is safe. And instead, it gets, every year, as you say, the opponents of Social Security among us, there aren't too many of them, but they are vocal. And they turn the report on its head and go, oh my gosh, there's a projected shortfall way out in the future. Now, if you're projecting 75 years, no one has a crystal ball. And as I always say, in the pension world, this would be in the green zone. It's very strong financing, but it's flipped upside down.
Right. We also have something which maybe we'll get to, which has the very science fiction-y name of the infinite horizon. And, so yes, I think, some of it is somewhat absurd in the sense that we're really, I feel like people are saying, our descendants on the Venus colony won't have enough, but I think it is important for people to realize how different the conversation is about Social Security and Medicare now too as well, since rightly and wrongly they get lumped together. But that this 75-year timeline, that's not applied, as far as I know, to any other government program, is
No,
it?
Usually 10 years is a long time. It's generally 5-year budgeting and occasionally 10 years. But again, this is the idea. This should be reassuring to the American people. The trustees report this year, and in fact, virtually every year, but this year, indeed, it is good news. It shows a large and growing surplus. It shows that in 2013 alone, there was about a $32 billion surplus. I know people talking about federal monies don't generally think that there are surpluses, but in this fund, there is a growing surplus, an accumulated surplus of $2.8 trillion. These should reassure the American people that Social Security will be there not just for today's retirees, but their descendants as well, their children and grandchildren.
We're talking to Nancy Altman, co-director of Social Security Works, and I think that's such a great point. I mean, if you have time, I know you're busy. I think it would be great to, make that point in writing for people, because I think people don't understand that. And I think that, of course, if we know that based on current projections there might be some kind of shortfall in 2 decades, 3 decades, 5 decades, it's a worthy exercise to see how might we address that. But it's not because there's a problem. It's because we're being extraordinarily foresighted in the way we're looking at this. And when we get to looking at that, when we get to that aspect of the conversation, I think what comes up is, we both have read the National Academy for Social Insurance did a comprehensive poll. Would people rather see benefits cut, or would they rather pay a little bit more on payroll tax? They didn't even go into some of the other options I think that you and I have, and others have explored in various conversations and so on, which is lifting the payroll cap or whatever. I think they would you pay more to protect Social Security? Would you pay more in payroll taxes? By the way, we're talking about very small amounts out of each paycheck. Would you pay more in payroll taxes to get bigger benefits from Social Security, which is not, compared to other developed countries, a generous program? And it seems to me, if I recall correctly, overwhelmingly across the political spectrum, people said, I would pay more to protect this program. I would pay more to get better benefits. And yet that still doesn't seem to be part of the conversation, does it?
No, you're right. And it's even the language. I mean, with all due respect, even saying there's a problem out there, it's not a problem. Social Security is a solution. And in fact, what the Trustees report shows is, as you say, that it's very careful and monitoring, so that the reason they project out so far is that all of us can have a rational, calm, reasoned discussion about, okay, Social Security can pay all benefits full and on time till 2033, and after that, it can pay 70 cents on the dollar. We're a very wealthy country. How do we make up that very small amount after 2033? We're the wealthiest nation in the world. What is the fair and just way to assess that increase, to make sure that it's totally in balance? And, of course, many of us believe that we should go beyond that it should be expanded. Social Security, another takeaway from this report, is how efficient it is. It shows the administrative costs of Social Security, which are less than a penny on every dollar spent. You show me any other institution, private or public, that has that high rate of efficiency, that low administrative cost. This is a great program. It works extremely well. The American people are behind it. This should be apple pie. This shouldn't be a conversation. And the only reason that it is there's so much misinformation circulating, and that, as your point, the infinite time horizon is a tactic to make it sound like there's a problem when there's not.
Yeah, I mean, in the end, we are all dead, as Keynes famously said. But
yes,
I guess, I love, in the long run, right, thank you. And I believe it's 73 cents on the dollar after 2034, but I could be wrong.
No, 77. It goes down to, but it starts out at 77 cents.
Oh, okay. I guess what I'm getting out of this is, and I'm really enjoying this because it's reframing even me. I think of myself as very, very supportive of this program, but even I need a tune-up sometimes. And what I'm getting out of this is, because I'm fighting these people all the time,
yes. And they're powerful and lots of money behind them.
And pretty soon what you find, I wrote a piece that once again they're saying, Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget, Social Security trustees show program headed toward insolvency. Since I fight this stuff all the time, I find myself forgetting that the real way to frame it, and I'm going to kind of play off what you said, is the great news is that these programs work. The even greater news is that we can increase retirement security for millions of Americans today and forever for just a few dollars a week.
Exactly. And there is, we're an extremely wealthy country. Most people don't think feel that way because their wages have been stagnating. But we are the wealthiest nation in the world. We are much wealthier now than we were when the program benefits were increased in the early 1970s, and it's time to increase them again.
Yes, and I think that well, you know better than I, but I think the data show that we, perhaps with the exception of South Korea, I'm not sure, but I think we have one of the weakest pension systems in the developed world. Isn't that right? Don't we have a
correct.
very
That is correct. If you compare the United States, the level of benefits provided that we provide through this wage insurance compared to any other industrialized country, we are close to the bottom in level of benefits, and that's crazy because we can obviously afford more, and we have an aging population and they should be taking a greater percentage of the goods and services. I mean, the interesting thing is that our population is scheduled to grow from about 12% people over 65 to about 20%, and yet Social Security only grows by about 1% of GDP. It's a very small amount that it grows, and it's important that seniors are cared for, and it's not this intergenerational thing. We are families, and adult children do not do well if their parents have to be supported. That's less resources for their own children. So what we want is a system where we're all doing well, we all work together, we all share our risks and responsibilities, and we all benefit. And those are the values underlying Social Security. The harder you work, the more you get. Everyone pays in. We care about ourselves and our friends and our neighbors and our society. And it's dignity for all individuals. It's American values, and that's why it's so popular.
And I think that, you know, if more Americans knew that we have such a weak system of retirement security compared to other countries, I think they'd be shocked and horrified. You know, they've been told we have greedy geezers and parasites and people living off the system. I think if they realized how ungenerous we are to older people, I think they would be horrified, and I think they would mobilize to do more to stop it, which is assuming you agree with that, and I imagine you do.
No, I agree completely. In fact, what people do understand is that there's a growing retirement income crisis because they see it in their own lives. So all the polls show that people are very, very concerned about that. The other thing that happens, and this is anecdotal, but it's happened to me, and I know I've had colleagues who've said the same thing. If you ask a younger crowd, how much do you think Social Security benefits are on average? They always estimate way higher than they are. And they're shocked to hear how low Social Security benefits are. They're just around minimum wage. They're not, and this is, you know, after a lifetime of work. So I think there is, I think what's happened, and this is part of the scaremongering, is that ideologues and this is really the thesis of my book, that from the beginning there has been a small group who just ideologically don't like the idea of Social Security libertarians, that kind of thing. And they used to just fight it honestly, but they got crushed every time because most Americans understand the value of this kind of insurance. So they changed their tactics. They either all disappeared,
and
which I don't believe.
I think
I'm sorry.
We're going to have to leave it there.
Okay.
But if people want to learn more, Nancy Altman, co-director of Social Security Works, that's socialsecurityworks.org. Is that right?
That's right, and it's the battle for Social Security that explains my last point.
That is Nancy's book, The Battle for Social Security. As always, Nancy Altman, thanks so much for coming on the show and fine-tuning our understanding of Social Security and Medicare. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
And we'll be right back after this. I'm Richard RJ Eskow, and this is The Zero Hour.